when America just kind of kept politics and religion out of their conversations.
Well, yeah, there's three things that you're supposed to not talk about in a bar, right? Race, religion, politics. And I feel like anywhere you go these days, that's the first three things. Like, hey, my name's Ryan. Where do you stand on this? It's like, dude, where do you fall? How have you?
I feel like, people want to bait you into, because they want to trap you if you don't believe what they believe.
Well, and they want a virtue signal too. You know,
that's exactly what they want to do. That's how they're going to get you.
They want to see they want the world to see how virtuous they are and how.
Yeah, look at this guy. He's not at all.
Yeah. That's first then, man.
Yeah.
So, dude, thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I'm just gonna kind of wing it here, dude. I haven't. I'm usually not on camera in these things. I'm usually just kind of sitting over there, dicking around. But tell me. So give me a little background, dude. Like, first of all, introduce yourself. Tell everybody what you do, and let's kind of dig into how you wound up doing it.
So I'm Danny O'Neill. I was born and raised right here in Northern California. I was born in Stockton. I graduated from high school at Grant in 2000. I was working in the Bay Area. I was 19 when 9/11 happened. Signed up for the Army, and I spent 7 years as a forward observer. They call us fisters though. It's the greatest gig in the world, man. You get essentially when diplomacy has failed and communications no longer working, they drop bombs and they send us to do it, which is a good gig, but it comes with a lot of trauma and a lot of bad stuff that comes with war. So I went to Iraq twice, and I came home with a lot of baggage, guilt, and shame.
What, like, if you don't mind me asking, like, guilt. Now, I'm assuming you're talking about your buddies that ultimately lost their lives over there. What was the worst part about coming home? Like, just I never went anywhere. Yeah. I was in my unit, also a fister. Yeah. Just at a time when our rotation we weren't going anywhere, and then I got out. Yeah. So I can't. I feel guilt about that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and this is what I found. The only people who don't have guilt from serving, it seems, are the ones who didn't come home from war. Yeah. Right? And because I've spoken to a lot of folks who didn't and say, I wish I would have went. I signed up to go do a job, or, I was in during wartime, but I never went. And they feel guilty about that, which I think is weird, because I went and I was like, I wish that we could have found a better way, or, had done things different, but that's not what happened. And, when that's the case, that's my job. So I go do my job. But the hardest part for me coming home in that transition was, I was letting fear dictate some of my life. And what I mean by that is I was afraid that people would judge me based on the stuff that happened in war. And I felt guilt about, you're right, about my guys, not even just dying, but getting hurt. Like, the youngest person in our battalion was 17 years old when we deployed. You're allowed to sign up for the military at 17, but you're not supposed to go into theater, into war. Well, I got assigned this guy 1 week before we left. He was 17 years old. His name was Bubba. He's from Mississippi, right? He lives in Louisiana now, and he is a fish boat captain, not a strip boat captain.
Wow.
Yeah. But he got blown up. So when he was 17, we get there in December, he turns 18 in February. The Department of the Army found out. I had to take him back to Baghdad International Airport, and they flew him. I had to watch him get on a plane to go to Kuwait. He stayed there until he turned 18. February 2nd, he gets a C-130 all by himself right back to Iraq, and that was his birthday present, come back to war. So he ended up getting blown up in September of 2006, and it took a good portion of his leg, and had to have a lot of surgeries, and he was pretty jacked up. He calls it an oil change, doesn't have any of his own blood anymore. What made that bad for me was he wasn't with us. Mm-hmm. He spoke Arabic. He barely speaks English, which I think is interesting. When I say that, he speaks English, but he adds R's to everything because he's from Mississippi. So he says "computer." He came to my house. He said, "You tell Mrs. Fawn this is beautiful." And I was like,
"That's strange."
He's funny like that, man. But he spoke Spanish and he spoke Arabic. He's a very smart kid. And so our first sergeant found out that this kid spoke Arabic. So he's like, he's going with me. I tried to argue with him. I didn't win that argument. He's the first sergeant. I'm not. So he went out with him in their patrol, and they got hit in the market area. There was a vehicle-borne IED there. It went off. It hurt and killed a lot of Iraqi people because it was in the market. When our guys go to help them, they had a secondary that went off and it hurt him and Sergeant Murray. They're lucky they're alive because a lot of people, got killed that day. And I listened to it on the radio. We had turned on our vehicle and had just started. We were going to do combo checks and make sure everything was ready to go so we could go out. See, Bubba would have came back and went out with me that night anyways.
Right.
Which is what I was arguing with the first one about, hey, we're short, we're fisters, we don't have enough people as it is. I need this guy. He's going to...
Are you talking to an infantry first sergeant?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And he's just, he didn't care.
Yeah, they don't give a shit.
No, he didn't. And so that was the end, he's going with me. So, yep, roger that. So that was, the end of the conversation. And, 3 hours later, I'm listening to my soldiers' battle roster number get called over the radio, and I'm freaking. So I try to go get info, and they don't have it, and I'm getting mad at the, stats aren't on who's in the
S2
talk
show
or whatever.
Yeah,
he's in there on the radio, and I was like, what's his status? And he doesn't know, and I'm like, bullshit. What's his fucking status? And I'm angry, and I'm hurt, and I feel helpless, and I don't like that feeling. In fact, in my head, what I saw was, and this is where the trauma comes from, in my head, what I saw for years was Bubba's on the ground screaming and crying, and we're the ones, I'm standing next to the people he's supposed to be with, who he trusts implicitly, who's been on every mission with him since he's, I'm the only squad leader he ever had in the Army. And so now he's out there with these guys. Not that he doesn't know them, but he doesn't know them. He came to us a week before. He didn't train with the infantry company. He came and I said, you stay next to me and, for this next year, we'll
so you build some rapport and stuff. Yeah.
And it didn't work out that way, man. And that's the way war. So I had a lot of guilt for that specific incident, and I had a lot of shame because I felt like I was supposed to protect him, and I felt like my other guys who got hurt, like I was supposed, maybe I didn't train them well enough, or I should have seen something. And it's all Monday morning quarterback, and you have no idea what's going to happen there. It's a crapshoot, and we were in a really shitty spot. And like, am I grateful that it was us? Yeah, because I had some savages for soldiers, man. I really did, and I'm couldn't be more proud of them. And I felt like I didn't do a good job. And I've talked to them several times. I've apologized to them. I've said things to them, even when I was drinking, I would sometimes call them and say, man, I'm sorry for this or that. And they would just be like, when I got my stripes, I tried to be like you. And that's the best compliment I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
And that I'll ever get, because it meant that to them I was a leader, a good one. And, I know that they would follow me into the depths of hell. And that's what makes me most proud, I think. But it was hard because I didn't know how to. Man, I know how to talk about that stuff. Like, especially when I do motivational speaking stuff now, I don't talk about gory details of war. I have lots of stories and memories in my head, but I don't bring those out. I'm very professional when I talk, because I don't want to, number one, I don't want to give them trauma, but I think most of the time I can communicate or get across that, articulate that sacrifices were made, and who I went to war as was not who I came home as.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the most important part, man, is somehow trying to translate your experience and how it, cause I think a lot of people don't understand the guilt, but whether it's from going and losing guys or not going somewhere. But having like articulating that in such a way that other people can understand and take something from it is something that I really admire about the content that I've seen from you. You seem like a happy, jubilant guy. I mean, what's your favorite memory from being in theater? Well,
I'm going to answer that, but I want to go back real quick just because of what you said. So the guilt that you feel for not going is the same guilt that, so one of my best friends is Shane. Shane lost both of his legs at the hip. He's got a little nub on one side, none on the other, and EFP, which is an
I know what EFPs
penetrator.
are.
Yeah, so it goes.
Those things are so gnarly.
Well, that's what we were dealing with. Like, we didn't have regular IEDs. We had EFPs in 06. So, he got hit by an EFP. Well, Shane had gone out during the day and done a 8-hour mission or whatever. Came back, and there was a guy who was sick, like really sick. He looked like shit. Shane, Parsons is his last name. Parsons said, "Hey, bro, why don't you take the fucking night off? You look like dog shit, and I'll go out." He's like, "Really, man?" And he's like, "Yeah, dude, I got this. Besides, look at you. What good are you? Fucking go get some rest. I got this." 20 minutes later, he's missing his legs. And that guy feels guilty the same way you do.
Yeah.
And, it was shit luck, And you didn't have a choice on whether you go or not, or where, right? So I have guys who went to war who didn't, stayed on the FOB, or who just didn't have the same kind of year or trauma. And they, a lot of them wish they had gone through that. most of it's because they want to connect with the people who have.
Right. Yeah.
I find it interesting, but it's also sad because you don't want people to carry that shit around, you know?
No, yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of guys that have some of those crazy experiences would rather not.
That's right.
You know?
The way war works is they give you medals for your worst day on this earth usually, and it's like, you know, I don't want this. I don't want any part of it. The best memory that I had in war... that you can repeat. All right.
Because I know what goes on with all that boredom, dude.
So yeah, that's actually what makes me laugh.
Yeah, it's the funniest part of it all.
We would be out on mission, and you know, it was a moons out, goons out thing for us. We're out in the middle of the night most of the time, patrolling around, because that's when guys do bad stuff and they plant bombs and all that stuff. I mean, they're out during the day, and we would go out during the day too, but most of the time we're out at night. And so we were in Bradley's the majority of my trip. So I was in 4th Infantry Division. So you essentially take a set of headphones and you cut them and you screw them into the little intercom system. So you don't have to like key up your mic to call on the radio, but everybody inside the vehicle can hear you without you having to key up your mic.
Right.
Utilize the radio. So we would hook up an iPod, because this is before, you know, anything cool like the phones we have now. So we had, you know, 1,000 songs on one thing, 500 songs, little nano, whatever you had, right? So I had an iPod and we'd listen to the music. And it was just like the random shit that would happen. So I would put on Bad Boys. Sergeant King never learned the words. He's like the Bad Boys song. That's him. The rest of us, we learned the words for the majority of it. And we'd get in chases. We'd get in gunfights. And I'd like put that on like we were cops or something. Like, we're not cops at all. But it was like, and so much random stuff. But it was always the music. Like, man, we got into a gunfight one night. And at the end of the gunfight, I think like smoke starting to settle a little bit. Phil Collins in the air in the night, like
oh yeah, dude.
Tonight, and you're kind of like, it's eerie, but that's kind of cool. Now you have emotional attachment to that stuff. But we used to sing and like just like you said, pure boredom. The shit that we would do to make each other laugh.
Yeah.
So the stuff like you can't repeat is like
you just can't replicate it anywhere else, dude.
No, you can't, like so. Sergeant King called. He's from Georgia. He's from Wrightsville, Georgia. Like when I say country, I'm talking ham hock bone scar on the bottom of his foot from the front yard. Country had an outhouse, right? He said their high school is segregated. He graduated in like 92 or something like that. I'm like, what? Okay, bro, Georgia's different. I'm on I live on the other side of the country, so I didn't know. But yeah, so like, you know, King calls you, he's like, hey, Aries 1-4, y'all see that Georgia snake over there? I'm like, what is a Georgia King snake? His last name's King. He's just over there on top of the vehicle peeing.
Dude, there's nothing funnier than Southern dudes on the radio.
Oh, it is the best.
Like, they are so funny. Yeah. They're so funny, dude. I love them because they'll use words that aren't real. Like I remember we were just doing like a call for fire exercise in this Lieutenant Battles, dude. I'll never forget this dude just because he knew how thick his draw was, and like I know he kind of leaned into it a little bit at sometimes, but like. He was like, man, you see that Dunlop over there? And I'd be like, what the fuck is that? And he'd be like, where that tree Dunlopped over. And like, I'm like, dude, you're referring to that as a Dunlop. Like, that's a thing back home for him, though. I had no idea what the hell he's talking about. And then he used it to describe a woman's belly one time, too, at a bar that was that made it all come together.
When you asked, so I always thought it was interesting because I grew up here, so it's like a melting pot, you know, and that's how I thought of California. Like, I've met people from all different walks of life, so many different backgrounds. But there are people from the South that just, I had to ask, like, hey, like, tell me some of that cliche shit that you guys say, or like those sayings that you have like back home on the farm or whatever. He's like, what do you mean? I was like when it's hot, like in California, everybody says hella.
Yeah, right.
So it's hella hot in Northern California. He's like, oh, hotter than 4-pecker billy goat? I'm like,
yeah, dude. That's what I'm saying.
4-pecker, oh, that's hot. Got it.
Yeah.
Hot like the Arab dude over there thinks that goat's hot right now. Tracking.
Yeah, there's what's the other one? I love it when they say since I was knee high to a grasshopper. Instead of saying since I was a kid, dude. Yeah. I've been saying that since I was knee high to a grasshopper. I'm just like, that's
shoot the wings off and take. Yeah, that's so much like just stuff that you hear them say.
But so my favorite part about the military was definitely like the people from different backgrounds. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes this is how I chose people to do different stuff. So when I, like this squad in particular, I was like, let me see, I'd re-enlisted, gone down there, and I said, let me see your guys' IDs. So they start pulling out their military IDs. And I don't want to say, I want to see what you look like before you came to me. And so I start going down, and I get this guy, and he's got a full beard, hair that I can only assume is down to his ass. And I'm like, where are you from, and what did you do before you came here? And he's like, well, I'm from Texas, Sergeant, and I did a lot of stuff before I got here. The last job I had, I was the mechanic over at Toyota over here, and I was a figure skater. And then
you're like, hey, hold on a second.
Yeah, you can't just like sneak that shit in there. Back up, bro. What's your middle name's Kendall? Oh boy. All right, we're gonna have some fun with you.
Oh my god.
And he legitimately did figure skating and ice, and he didn't look like, but he was a mechanic, so he was my driver. And even though a lot of times the infantry dudes would fuck shit up, we would like switch vehicles with them and have to take their crap back. He would be so angry. Like, I was a little worried for the infantry dudes sometimes. Like,
damn,
when they come back off mission, he's going to go find their room and do something bad to them because he was pretty pissed off. But they would like bring out a vehicle that the turret didn't work, so it was like start shutting off, so they can't fight. Like, why would you bring this out into the middle of our war zone that we're having out here?
Right.
Like, could you just get one that works? Yeah. Worst come to worst, drive out in a Humvee.
Yeah.
Jump in our Bradley, and I'll drive the Humvee back. It'll take me 3 minutes instead of having to drag your fucking vehicle back with the other one because it doesn't work now. It's going to take me 2 hours.
They don't issue common sense, especially to Bravos, dude.
No. But that's all right. You know, like, there's all these memes about, like, teaching them a polar mission and...
yeah, right?
I don't know what to do with my hands.
So what year did you get out?
So I got out in 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
And then when did you start... thinking that you wanted to do something a little more than just get out and get on with your life? When you wanted to, were you struggling yourself and kind of inspired you to help other folks out, or how did it all come about?
Well, when I was struggling, I didn't want to help anyone else out. I wanted to isolate.
Yeah.
And one of my guys ended up committing suicide, and another one died in a car accident. So,
fuck.
And that happened pretty close to each other. So then we had, like, my company commander committed suicide, and they put it on the cover of the Army Times, and we had a rash of them. I had tried to commit suicide, but, like, no one really knew my struggles. No one knew what I was going through, and I kind of kept it that way on purpose, especially because, like, I was a leader, and I didn't want them, like, I don't know. I didn't want to seem weak to them. To be honest,
and like, I could see a lot of, especially with a company commander going out that way, I could see a lot of younger soldiers being angry about that.
Yeah, and I know,
and feeling despair.
Yeah, if he can't do this, how can I?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so especially when considering, okay, so, and this is how that guilt and shame shit really works, man. So that company commander wasn't, not that he didn't go out on mission, but he wasn't going out like we were, right? That's not his job. He felt guilt and shame for the guys that got hurt or killed that he felt responsible for, right? The same way I did, you know. But for the most, as a squad leader, I'm there with them every day.
Right.
So I suppose that part was different, but you don't realize how powerful that shit is, especially on your mindset. Like, so when I say that I was afraid to, like, discuss any of this with the people back here, that stopped me from processing any of this, from having an outlet. So then I just suppressed it, and then little things would bring out part of that. And to be honest with you, my behavior was terrible because my coping skills were shit. So I had a lot of trauma as a kid. I go to war, it makes it worse, right? And everything that I saw growing up, even so, I played sports, and in football, like, the more violent you are, the better the coach loves you, right?
Yep.
And I was a quarterback, but I also played free safety. And my coach loved that if you were running back, and, like, the linebacker would likely meet you the same time I would, because I'm running as fast as I can. And we used our head for everything.
Right.
It was like, what do you mean wrap up? Just smash them with your head.
Yeah.
All right. So
just put on a big old neck collar.
Yeah, oh man. And my coach, like, loved that part about my aggressiveness and just competitiveness, I think. So it was always celebrated. And then like same thing in the military, like the more violent I was, the more, and it didn't even have to be angry, but it's for my superiors, that was me showing that I was willing to step up and wanted to, you know, be in positions, or they just thought I would be good for them either way. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was fine, but I think that with that, I needed more training. I'm going to have that we're going to war. So before 9/11, Garrison would have taught you, you know, being back in the States, you would have learned how to be a soldier. It would have been, you know, a little more dog and pony show probably for a lot of stuff, which I wouldn't have liked.
Yeah.
But, you know, having the job that we had, I spent a lot of time in the field. And then when I wasn't there, I was drinking and partying, and then go to the field, just training for your job. So going to war, I thought this was going to be my test, right? Like, this is how I can discern whether I'm a man or not or whatever. But you come home and I start feeling all this like negativity towards everything that happened. It wasn't even so much that like I wish I wasn't a soldier and participated in war. It's not that. It's more like I wish they would have trained me how to process this shit better, because I'm trying to, you know, figuring it out on my own. So then now that I'm like figuring this stuff out and I'm finding happiness and joy and I'm chasing the things that make me feel good and alive again, mm-hmm. instead of sitting on my couch drinking and, you know, thinking about what, you know, I used to be.
It just seems so easy.
Yeah. Oh, it is, right?
It seems so easy, dude.
Now I tell the other guys to do that stuff, and I help them. I don't just tell them they should do it. I show them, and I don't just show them. I talk about it even to strangers, and I let them know that it's okay, because some of them don't want to talk about the stuff at all, and some of them are willing to talk about it, but only with guys like me or guys like you that, you know, that served and they feel a little more comfortable with. They won't talk to their families about it. They won't talk to coworkers, and, you know, people ask questions because they don't know any better. You ever kill anyone? And like,
God damn, dude, that is the one question that when people ask a service member, I'm just like, holy shit, you've never talked to a service member.
Well, I tell them like, okay, so when people do ask that, because so it's interesting that I actually had this guy who ran a veteran nonprofit, and his wife was at one of their meetups or one of their events. So she comes, and we were having a good conversation, and she asked, you know, because I'm pretty vulnerable. I'm willing to talk about my stuff, but like I said, I don't get into gory details because I don't want people to go away with trauma or, you know, pity. I don't want any of that.
Right.
I want you to understand what happened, but I don't need you don't necessarily have to know that stuff. She asked, you know, have you ever killed anyone? And I said, I'm not afraid to answer that question, but I want you to think about, what if the answer is yes? Think about how that affects me, how you're going to take that when I tell you, and how, like, you know, that affected me, that person, their family, you know, and my family, because my family now unpacks the baggage that I brought home from war. And she just didn't realize, like,
the implications of that question. Yeah.
And
it can change unknowingly. Like, I don't think a lot of people understand how that can change your perception of somebody else. Asking what you think is a innocent question. Yeah. Hey, have you ever killed somebody? And then if they're not expecting, you know, yeah, I did what I had to do, or, you know, however far that individual wants to go into the details, like, you might come away from that conversation, the veteran might come away from that conversation thinking, fuck.
Yeah. Well, that's usually the way it goes, because,
you know what I mean?
Like, when I first got back, I used to say I checked IDs at the chow hall. People would ask me what I did in the military, and I would say that, like, it was a job. Like, oh yeah, I don't know. And usually they didn't ask any more questions because they were like, okay, listen, we all wear a uniform. You don't need to check any IDs. Everybody just comes in. Like, you know, back here they enter like you enter your social security number or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody checks IDs and like, oh, you're a soldier. Yeah, you're wearing. You got the same camo on everyone else does. I didn't want to answer the questions. And then eventually I got to a point where it was, I was willing to talk a little bit about it. And when people got into that stuff, I'd say, well, I wasn't the dental assistant. My job was to go get in gunfights, and, you know, because the same thing, I would say I blow stuff up instead of my job is to blow people up. Right. It's different. When you add that human part to it, that human element, it changes the dynamic of what, you know, your conversation. Like blowing up dirt and grass and, you know, on the side of a mountain, that's one thing.
Like, oh, they're blowing up a little berm to build a school versus calling for fire on a platoon-sized element. You know what I mean? Like, those are two very different things.
And change, you know, so like my first squad leader, his name is Jared Monty, and so the schoolhouse where they train fisters is now named after him, right? And
Monty Hall?
Yeah.
I've been there.
So there's a song called "I Drive Your Truck" by Lee Bryce.
I know that one.
So that's about how Paul deals with the death of Jared, and that's the coin that I carry every day. He taught me my job. He made me take a fister shot. He made me push a Humvee in the fucking motor pool in the snow in Korea. He made me do a lot of things. The last memory I have is right before he left to go to Fort Drum. We were having some Chivas Regal in the my buddy Vargas's room. Vargas ended up going to the 82nd when we left, and those are big boots to fill. He's my first squad leader, so I thought that when I was done with my shit, he would be the person I could go talk to about my experiences and what he taught me and what I learned and what I taught my guys. And he wasn't there to do that, right? And so the lieutenant from that platoon, Thomas Kennedy, he became a major and was with Florent Groberg when he got the Medal of Honor in Afghanistan. And, unfortunately, Major Kennedy was killed. My next squad leader after that, Deason, I found out he got killed when my ex-wife was watching Intervention on TV and his soldier was drinking himself to death. And they kept saying, he kept saying Mike, and then they showed, and his staff's on Deason, they showed his picture, and I was just floored. I couldn't believe it, right? And the same thing happened when I found out about Monty. Like, I had no idea that he was gone, and then it was Medal of Honor talk when it was, and I was like, wait, what happened? And that's the way it works. When you do our job, you save everyone's life. It is the most chaotic moments, right, in war, and your job is to stay calm during all that chaotic, everything going to shit around you, and do some quick math and blow
do some
shit
real
up.
Accurate math.
Yeah,
too,
don't fuck
dude.
that
That's
up.
not
You don't wanna
fucking
fuck that
easy.
up.
Yeah,
No.
it's not easy either.
So to have, just think about the mindset you have to go into a situation like that and volunteer to do that job and stick around. It's
I chose it because it was the hardest job I qualified for.
Yeah.
I passed my flight physical.
Yeah.
I, for somehow, some way, just got screwed out of an aviation slot in the California Guard because I was at Knox on 29-day orders, dicking around with a bunch of cadets on, in TRADOC.
Yep.
And missed the call. And now I was like, what's the next what's the next one job where they need the most competent individuals?
Yeah.
And they threw, of course, they're probably talking about the FDC, but I spent a day in there. I was like, fuck this, dude. I need to get back out there with the fisters it's a hell of a job, dude.
It really is. And so that has allowed me to do a number of things. One, I get to interact with the infantry dudes, which I enjoyed because they're a little crazy too.
They're nuts,
they're
dude.
fucking crazy.
I love them.
Yeah, and we seem to mesh pretty well together because it was usually just us, Doc, and the grunts. So we like that. It was always funny because in the beginning they're like, "Oh, you're extra. Come do this." I'm like, "I'm not extra." When things go to shit, you're gonna realize how.
Yeah, I'm attached to you right now.
Yeah. But you always get these infantry first sergeants who don't necessarily value you until they need you, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, you do stuff."
I literally cut my teeth in sales selling these fucking infantry commanders on field artillery plans, dude. Like, hey, I promise you that we can do this better.
Yeah.
Like, we just hear out my plan, and like it went from that to being kind of cocky with these dudes, But like, you almost have to be. You need to be arrogant. You have to sell your shit because if you don't, it's like. And I was, another question that I have for you, and this is more or less a high level, like theater type shit, but like how did your deployment, like did your deployments, like how applicable in Iraq was the field artillery? Because I know that like right now in these super heavily populated areas, it's tough to put anything but an X-Cal through a roof. And then aside from that, I mean, like that's like a one shot and over type thing. I felt like had I deployed, I would have spent a lot of time bored and probably just ended up going out on patrols and stuff.
So in Afghanistan, there's not much for collateral damage. They don't care if you blow up.
You can just fire that shit.
That's right, all day long. I know a guy who dropped more ordnance than I've ever heard of, and I'm grateful to know that dude and just knowing what he did over there. But for us, it was way different. So in 2003, we thought we were going to get into big tank battles. We thought that the Iraqi tank army was that's what we were going to get into. Instead of guys in bongo trucks, with these Toyota, essentially they're these bullshit trucks that they put mount guns to, whatever.
The fucking Hilux?
Yeah, the Hilux.
Yeah.
And roll around in those, and you're like, oh, this is way different than I thought. And they had, like, obviously the all unconventional stuff. We weren't even allowed to load our 25 mic on my second trip. So I was in Baghdad, like right outside Sadr City, and you weren't allowed to shoot your, like, the only thing we could have loaded up was our 240s and 50 cals, because they didn't want us shooting through buildings or blowing all this shit
You
up.
don't want
And
any
I'm like,
anti-material shit.
yeah, you're like, oh, hey guys, sorry, we're having this war out here.
Let's just hamstring ourselves just to look.
I was gonna say that's exactly. It's essentially Uncle Sam saying, "Here, put your left arm behind your back, and then with this one, put it in your pocket."
Yeah, you know us,
and then
dog. We're
fight.
all about equality now.
I know. Gotta
Fuck
be
me,
inclusive.
dude.
So yeah,
So
it's not applicable at all. Like,
Yeah.
because they won't let you do it.
yeah, you won't get anything cleared. Fuck, I just had a question that I don't know. What's the sickest fire mission you ever did? Like,
I didn't get to do any anymore.
didn't get to do a whole lot of them.
They
Fuck,
did.
that
They did
sucks,
counter
dude.
fire, like a counter battery, and it was into a palm grove to like, because like I said, dude,
You guys had 119ers, 777s, Paladins.
We had, yeah, so they had paladins, and they had, because it was all 4th ID stuff, so everything was mechanized. So we had,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
I love Paladins, dude.
we did it. They did, you know, and they would shoot mortars out there. But it was like, it was not to hit anyone. It was not to kill our enemy. It was supposed to be what? Shock and
Show of
awe?
force, yeah.
Show of force. You shoot out in this fucking palm grove where nothing happens, and it's, 30 minutes after they've shot, 14 mortars or rockets into our fucking camp, and this is our response.
Yeah.
I don't have time. I didn't even do that shit. There was some guys that they had, some fisters that they used that worked in the talk because they had clearances. Those guys did that. And I went on mission every day.
Yeah.
Whether it was clearing houses or just on patrol, driving around, looking for something to get into. And that definitely sucked because you want to do your job,
Yeah.
We reached the 30 minutes.
Yeah, I need to get a camcorder instead. Like these two. Those won't shut off.
Yeah, but the artillery, like, they end up trying to make, like, 13 Bravos be 11 Bravos, and it doesn't work out very well because they don't have the same training. And
Yeah.
So then you have guys who don't know what they're doing, and they're flagging their buddy, clearing buildings and shit, and you're just like, give me your weapon. Don't do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, that's
Well,
what
and
I like about our job.
I feel like the infantry commanders are so much more inclined to use mortars too, because it's their guys
shit, yeah.
and their Charlies. Like, and like I know an 11 Charlie, Roger, fuck you, because I'm about to compliment him and he doesn't fucking deserve it. I'm just kidding. He's one of my good buddies, but he's literally one of the most intelligent infantrymen I've ever met, and I am convinced it's because he's a Charlie. Like, they just kind of, that didn't make him intelligent, but it's like it weeds out all the fucking
riff-raff.
mouth freezers and the rest of the.
Our mortar platoon from that unit there, when you would call them to attention, their platoon motto was "Mortars are hung." Gotta love it. That's the fun stuff. Like, so, yeah.
All that non-PC shit, dude, is literally what you look back on and laugh. Like, that's why I feel like
we would all be fired today.
Yeah, it's even in the military, dude.
They're gonna change Fister. They're not gonna be able to call them Fisters.
I am surprised that they haven't already, dude. I'm surprised they haven't already. I remember De Mesa, another one of my favorite people in the world, dude. He was a Bravo, deployed to Iraq, and then came back and became a Fister. And we were on the wildfires. We got fucking deployed on these wildfires, like, stateside disaster relief. And like, we go out and we found this. We were somewhere where they had like balsa wood. Like, it was just everywhere, and you could just carve this shit like super easily. So we found this big, like, girthy fucking stick of balsa wood and just carved the most veiny, triumphant, disgusting dick you've ever seen. And then halfway up the shaft was this dude literally like carved in the Fister symbol like perfectly in the middle and put all of our unit regalia and shit on it. He fucking went. We walked into a Target in full kit because we didn't have anything else. So, like, he bought a bunch of like markers and lacquer and like sandpaper and shit. Dude, he fucking tied a 550 cord sling on it and everything, dude. And at the end of this all, so we had this big lacquered carved fister dick with a fucking sling on it. And
It's definitely some fister shit.
dude, the fucking colonel saw it, and Lieutenant Colonel Murphy, dude, I thought he was gonna lose his shit just because, again, like in today's army, he fucking gave him a coin, dude. Called him up in front of the whole battalion.
That's what's up.
And was like, hey man, you're doing great things for morale.
So, you know, when I knew Monty, he wasn't a Medal of Honor recipient. He was a fuck up like the rest of us. He wasn't just a fuck up. He was the king of the fuck ups. He was the squad leader, right? So, two quick stories for Monty. One of them, he was a staff sergeant when I met him. He was a E5 when he left, and that was because him and Sergeant Gaddy, who had gone out drinking down the Ville. This is in Korea. We're on Camp Casey in 1st 15th FA. So it was the Colt team, right? And so Monty and Gaddy had been drinking. There was a specialist from Como, and I can see the guy's face now because I remember what he looked like, but I don't remember his name. But him and Gaddy, somehow they started exchanging words, and they get into a fight. Well, Gaddy's pretty wasted, and I don't think the Como guy, he was like a little bit drunk, but he wasn't drunk like Gaddy was. So he ended up like beating Gaddy up a little bit. He was getting the best of him. Well, Sergeant Monty jumped in, and he got a black eye for his trouble, but he kicked the shit out of the Como guy. So all three of them have to go see the colonel. The first two got busted down. Monty goes in there, and they're like, you know, Monty, why would you get in a fight with this guy? And, you know, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, well, sir, the platoon rules state that if one of your battle buddies gets in a physical altercation, you are to help them win the fight and then leave the AO, you know, exit the AO. And he said,
it's in our medal.
Well,
right here.
Sergeant Monty, I understand that, though those obviously aren't, you know, Army or even battalion authorized rules. I understand that rule. However, the specialist is from headquarters company as well. And yes, sir. As I stated, the platoon rules state that anyone in the platoon who gets into God damn it, Sergeant Monty, 45 days restriction, 45 days reduction in rank from staff sergeant to 5. So he breaks him down, and, you know, it's just like, Monty's like, well, you know, platoon rules. I did what I had to do. All right, so he gets busted down. He decided to do a river crossing one night without doing a very good reconnaissance trip. So they go to this river. Now, during the day, it's like filled with kids. There's tons of people out there. It's hot and shit. It's during the summer. And Monty's like 5'7", and he's from Raynham, Massachusetts. In fact, he sounds like he's been smoking for like 80 years. I can hear him right now. Fucking go Pats, go Sox. So he's like, we're going to cross this river, boys. We're going to go over here. Like, all right. So he's got this fucking M4, and it's over his head, and he starts walking out into the river. I don't know, dude. Maybe from here to the door, 10 feet he gets in, and it takes him. Now,
oh, shit.
50 yards downstream, 60 yards upstream, calm. Right here, like level fucking 4. Just white water. It's rapids. It takes him. He crawls out of the fucking river, down the river, right? He comes out, he's fucking soaking wet. Like, I dropped my rifle. Huh?
Oh, shit. I think you told me this story before at the thing. Yeah.
So, pull the
my
up,
God.
turn the lights on.
What a
nightmare. To look in there. Oh, dude. So, like, listen, after like an hour, this is like an hour and a half, like, we're soaking wet. We are fucking feeling around on our hands and stuff, and like trying not to go too far in, but we're trying to. You're expendable. Your weapon's not, right? You gotta get weapons. Got to go back. We got to call the brass. So now we tell the chain of command, we lost this weapon. We tied a rope from one side of the river to the other. The river is not small. It is fucking 60 feet across. However far it is across, it's fucking far. So for like 4 days, we're out here with this rope, and we're like hanging onto it in the middle of this river, trying to feel for a rifle, right where he goes in, and nothing. So big government, typical government fashion. After those first 4 days or whatever, we couldn't find it. They call the Korean dive team, National Korean dive team out there, and they said, "Hey,
it's for an M4."
Yes. Remember, there's no weapons allowed in fucking Korea, so we can't be having them running around.
Yeah, that's true.
And we're by the border of North Korea. So he's like, because we're out in the.
You're at Humphreys or Casey?
I was at Casey, but
gotcha.
Our training areas went all the way up by the DMZ. So there he goes. if there's any media comes out here, because we have not allowed access to this river, so people are going to, no fishing, the people are going to get fucking mad.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to have an issue. They're going to call the media and go, what is the Americans doing down there? So we call the Korean National Dive Team and they tell us if the media comes out here, we're doing a joint training exercise with the Korean Dive Team. Joint training, whatever.
With the Korean National Dive Team.
Oh, I'll have to show you the picture in a minute. After that. So, like, day 3 of them being out here, they've not been able to find it. The guy's cleaning his mask after lunch, and he walks in, goes to rinse his mask, and right before he goes to put it back on his head, he just reaches down and grabs the fucking M4 and lifts it up. Let's go, boys. We're out of here. So then they got the battalion commander, the XO, all these guys got our colors, coins from every company, all that shit, and had a big old deal with the fucking national dive team.
Dude, that's...
So that was like, just epic stuff that makes you laugh.
Look how fucking pissed all you guys look.
Yeah.
You're all just like, oh my God, I'm so ready.
We were going to do this dumb shit because, it's like, whatever. But he didn't, so Monty didn't get in trouble for that. Like, he got an ass shooting, but he didn't get busted or anything like that. But it was just funny. That's just like funny stories that we could tell about him.
There's a million of those, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been with Warfighter?
So my wife and I started Warfighter Overwatch in November. So we got our 501c3 November 16th of last year, of 2020.
Okay.
And the reason I know that is because it's my anniversary. And it just happened to be the day that California
accepted your
shit. Yeah. So we started Warfighter Overwatch because one of our snipers committed suicide. I went and buried him in Ohio, and I was just tired of doing it, man. I had buried guys, and
now, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, like, how many at this point?
So from the battalion that I went to Iraq with, and we lost 9 guys. I wear dog tags with their names every single day, right? 9 guys in war. Came home, 15 suicides from that unit. 15. So now more guys have committed suicide.
Shit, man. So one more than the video that I watched the other day, because I think you said 9 and 14.
Yep.
Fuck.
Yep.
So what is Warfighter Overwatch doing to help those guys out?
Yeah, so we have a number of programs. We don't just help out vets, we help first responders too.
Mm-hmm.
And we do a couple of things. We have a few different programs. The base program for our suicide prevention is called Squad Recon, and essentially it's squad reconnection instead of reconnaissance. And it's where we take guys who deployed together, went through trauma together, and we bring them back together. We give you your support system back, the people you went through the trauma with, that you may or may not have talked to about some of this trauma. You've probably suppressed it and held it in. And now you're going to reconnect with them. We're going to get you guys back together, and we're going to do a trip, whether it's hiking a mountain, whether it's surfing, something where you get outside and you got to challenge yourself physically.
Yeah. And
we're going to help you go through, some adversity, but you're going to reconnect and bond. While we're doing that, I'm going to slip in a little bit of mental health stuff that, it's kind of stuff that we know works, but that if I put it in front of you, if I put it on a plate, the guys may not eat it. But when I do it this way, little by little, they do. They take it and then they start using it. After that, we bring them back with their families. So we build that support system up, including the family. And the way we do that is we bring the significant others, spouses, someone who cares about the veteran. Doesn't have to be, a spouse or something like that. But essentially, my wife wouldn't reach out to my guys and say, hey, Danny's not doing so good if she doesn't know them. But because she does know some of my guys, she will call them and say, hey, Shane, Danny's not doing so good. Can you give him a call? And she doesn't say, can you go call him and say, hey, I heard you're sucking or you're not, you're being a wuss today.
Yeah.
He calls me and asks me what what are you up to? What's going on? How's the kids? What's up? What's new in your world? And we just chat.
Yeah.
And then eventually it'll go to, if I'm honest and vulnerable with them, which I try to be, right? I haven't been doing so good. Things aren't, I've been struggling. I'm thinking about this or that. I'm stressed about whatever. I've had anxiety. I'm not communicating well, and it's coming out my relationships, right? Usually it doesn't sound like that.
Right, but,
something to that effect. Saying, yeah. So it started with me reaching out to my guys initially and making them connect with each other. And then sometimes they didn't want to, right? So like Bubba, he would go off the grid. He wouldn't answer his phone. He'd just have it shut off for months. And he wouldn't message me or respond to me. And I'd tell him, listen, dude, I'll give you 24 hours to answer me, and then I'm calling your mama.
Yeah.
Right? Or I'll call you at work. I don't want to bug you at work. I don't want to interfere with your life.
Just want to fucking check.
I want to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not, that's cool too. But we need to talk about it. See, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to do nothing about it.
Yeah.
We have to work on it. Like and I talk to this you know, not just with my guys, but with many people, like if you were not good at something in the military, let's say you weren't good at push-ups, you just sucked at push-ups. I'm going to make you do all the fucking push-ups and you're going to be the subject matter expert on push-ups, right? So it doesn't matter what you feel is your weakness or your area of improvement that you need to make. We're going to help you make it. You don't have to do it alone, but we're going to help you make it. It's no different than when I get a saw and I have to give it to one of my guys. Now, the only time he's seen a machine gun is on Rambo and in Hollywood, right? Mm-hmm. But now he's responsible for it. Well, something magical happens over the next 2 weeks. One, I'm going to make him take it out of the arms room every day, take it apart and put it back together. He's going to practice and play with it until he feels comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to show him how to do it, and then I'm going to watch him do it. And this has happened, 3 different times, different squads, where you give it to that guy, and what happens is they start racing each other. Hey, I did it in 12 seconds. Do it faster than that. Hey, I took it apart, put it back together. I did it blindfolded now. And they start helping each other. Now I've trained an entire squad on this weapon, and it's only one guy is assigned that weapon. But if he goes down, I got 9 more guys who know what they're doing. It's the same thing with this stuff, right? So if we're struggling, we reach out. You tell one person. So I like if we have 2 people, we teach this stuff. 2 people. One, because sometimes one of the persons may be the person that's causing angst or anxiety or you're struggling with. Could be my wife. We're not getting along. I need to talk to someone else. Normally she's my go-to. Now I need to find someone else. Sometimes life is just crazy and busy and people have their own shit that they're going through. So you got to have 2 people that you can talk to, that you can tap into at any time and say, hey, I'm not doing good. Can we meet for coffee? Or, can we go for a walk? Or, I golf, so let's go hit some balls. Or let's go hike for 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Because I'd rather go out there for a couple hours and clear my mind. That's why I surf. I take a rock out there with me, I put it in my wetsuit because we're in California, the water is cold. Paddle out there, and that rock represents all of my stress, anxiety, all the transference, the shit that other people are going through that I'm trying to help them, and I'm worried for them. I take that, I give it to the ocean, and I focus, and I'm in the present for a while, right? Because I want to do the same thing at home. So we do the squad recons, and they get to pick what they want to do. We do the same thing for first responders. So normally I would tell you that you have time in the military from when your trauma occurs to when you go home and even have to think about answering some of those questions. I say normally because my last day on, FOB Rustamaya was November 26, 2006, and Captain Fraser and Captain Hamill were supposed to go home that day with us, and they got killed that morning. Instead of their family getting their hero home after a year in hell, they got a knock at the door, right. And so that's devastating for them and their families. I can't even imagine waiting a whole year for the person you love most in this life just to, not get it and to have it end tragically like that. Well, that's a lot of trauma and guilt and shit that we have to go home and deal with. And you have a very short amount of time to process that. And people want you to be happy when you get home.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
And that's one thing that I've noticed as someone who hasn't really deployed, but even if you just spend some time away for training or shit, come home after 6 or 7 months or whatever, and people want you to just kind of fall back into the same routine. And you're like, dude, I need to decompress a little bit. Right. I just spent 6 months at SIL, that shithole. I need to you know what I mean? I need to chill out a little bit or just kind of do nothing or, go surf or what have you.
So the Army didn't teach us how to, they taught me how to go to war. They taught me how to teach my guys how to go to war and be successful in any environment. Hot, cold, I'm good. But they didn't teach them how to tell them how to come home.
It ends at the AAR, dude. Their training basically ends at the AAR. What could we have improved? What did we do well? And now go fuck yourself.
3 sustains. Yeah, right? So
3 sustains, 3 improves. Fuck.
Right? This is exactly the kind of shit you're talking about. The mentality where it's not diving deep, it's not helpful, and it's not beneficial. It's a check the fucking box. And that is not okay when we're talking about mental health. So when I had my own struggles, I tried to kill myself. When I was a freshman, I walked in on my dad, who's a Vietnam vet, getting ready to kill himself. Stopped him, thank God. His dad, my grandfather, was in the Battle of the Midway. He was on the USS Hornet, which is right here in Alameda. It's a museum now. I'm taking my kids there. My grandfather's buried in the Golden Gate National Cemetery. He killed himself right before he turned 44 when my dad got sent to Vietnam. I never met him. I never heard his stories. Most of the people I served with, their heroes, their grandfather. He was, served during World War II. He's a, D-Day or Iwo Jima, or he was, Guadalcanal, wherever they were at. They went and served their country, and they listened to their stories, or just knew that was someone who'd been through some shit, and
that's how I wound up, man.
Yeah,
grandfather was a World War II pilot, dude. Can't believe a plane could get off the ground with that guy's balls in it. but man, that's exactly right. I mean, you look back at those things, and then we especially with World War II.
Yeah.
we romanticize the fuck out of that war.
100%.
I mean, like it's a
Take
true American love story,
Yeah,
dude.
Rosie the Riveter, the Navy guy kissing the girl. There's all these iconic points of view from World War II, right? And it's, you know, Bob Dole was my friend. I got to have many conversations with him, and I knew that his time was getting, she's 98 years old. But that dude was hard as woodpecker lips. And when I first met him, the very first time I met him, and we had a conversation, started talking, it didn't take very long for him to say, you know, because it was for caregivers, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel like a caregiver. I had a couple of infantry guys living with me. I would joke, these guys can't navigate without their fister. I'm trying to help them navigate, right? So that's my favorite part about coming home, is that I get to use that part in my helping the infantry dudes.
Right, yeah.
But, you know, seriously though, you know, Bob and I, we would talk, and it didn't take very long for, you know, me to say what I did in the military, and then him to say, oh yeah, we had spotters, and, you know, they did this and that. And it was like, you realize someone who's been through chaos and real war, and I admire his leadership and his selfless service that he really, you know, truly gave of himself and his wife to make this country a better place. And, you know, he used the training that the military gave him and the leadership, and maybe even just some of his Kansan upbringing to do just that, to help, you know, go across party lines to make things better. And I wish he would have been president. You know, like there's things that
he just passed like
it's a week ago.
Ago.
So I'm grateful that even though my grandfather, like essentially this is even him killing himself long before I was born, it's a trauma that comes to me because my dad had it, you know. Mm-hmm. And being able to have someone like Bob Dole as a mentor and friend, that definitely helped. And I want to make sure that we're doing that for the next generation, because number one, it's not going to be it's a win.
100%.
We go to war again, you know. And when we send them, fuck, man, I don't want them to go through the same shit that I went through when I came home. That's bullshit.
It seems like such a waste.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like such a waste. And you know,
I refuse to do it.
And I think that we're on the right track, because like when I look at it, like my granddad, he was a carpetbagger in World War II. Yeah. So he's a badass dude. Yeah. And he came back and you know, he just locked himself up. He got a studio apartment and he started painting. He incredible artist, but like that's how he coped. And then he died, you know, in the early 90s. But like, I truly do feel right now that if someone were to come back from war and lock themselves in an apartment for 30 years and paint, I feel like someone along the line would be like, hey bud, like, let me in and let's figure this shit out. You can't just sit in here and paint. You know what I mean? Like back then, dude, PTSD wasn't a thing. Like they were probably calling it shell shock and shit. And like as a pilot, dude, like those guys had like a 7-minute lifespan. He was flying B-24s and shit. Like he was the real deal. Came back, didn't cope well with it at all. Had terrible relationships with most of my family, and then died alone. Yep. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody, man.
And that's why the cycle stops with me, right? Because my kids may end up going to war because they think, like, I didn't realize, like, most military families, they're military families. Like, my dad was not happy I signed up on 9/11, but I think he is, you know, at least grateful that I'm his only son, so I get like his angst at the time. But I'm sure there's some part of him that says, I'm glad my son was a warfighter, you know. And I'm grateful that I did get to serve, because I have the other people. So that guilt thing is so interesting. People who were not allowed to serve because they had hand tattoos. People who weren't allowed to serve because they had a DUI or a fucking didn't have a high school diploma. Had a good enough degree. A GED was not good enough in the beginning, but then partial, you know, by 05, 06 with the high, you know, 07 when we were going through the
fucking face tattoos. They were like, come on in, baby.
You just can't have the front of your neck tattooed, but the rest is totally cool. It's all good. Yeah, no worries. And so then you're getting these guys in. You're like, where the fuck are you from? Compton. Cool. Hey, you ever shot a machine gun before?
Yeah, right.
They're, you know,
I remember they told us we couldn't have sleeves for a while. Like, and when I was getting ready to commission, they had flip-flopped this rule like 5 times. And I was, because, you know, like new sergeant major of the Army or whatever. And I was like, hey man, this guy just said that tattoos are cool. I'm going to go get blasted while I can and get grandfathered in. That's exactly what I did. Yeah. Dude. I started from the bottom up instead of the top down.
Do you know what the Marines policy was just recently?
Hands and neck?
You couldn't have a tattoo bigger than your hand. So you would have to piecemeal tattoos.
Like a whole sleeve?
Yes, you couldn't have a sleeve. You could have one here that was like
that's
this
ridiculous.
Big, and it was like, what if you get a sergeant major whose hand's only this big? Is it his hand? Whose hand is it? I'm going to go get my buddy's hand who's this big. We're going to get some ink.
Well, sergeant majors have tiny hands too, dude. I bet you 9 out of 10 of sergeant majors have tiny ass hands.
So I always forget his name, and I feel like a dickhead for forgetting. But so General Odierno was like, he was in my CG when he was a 2-star. He was in charge of 4th Infantry Division. Him and the sergeant major were both like 6'5", 6'6", or 6'7", whatever it is, and massive. Like, I mean, Odierno is like, he was like 280, 300. Yeah. And you would see them walking. They did not look like everyone else. You're like, oh, fuck, who are they? Yeah.
You think that fool would have passed tape?
No, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Hell no. Not a fucking chance.
Standard's a standard, dude. I don't get how they get away with that shit.
His son went to West Point. He was in the Army. He lost an arm in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I met his son. And then he just died, too, not that long ago.
Really? Odierno?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I've been pretty out of touch with Army leadership since I left, man. I needed a break.
Him, I think I just knew about his because he was our CG. So like when we did the invasion and stuff, like he was the guy. Yeah.
So I feel like I'm asking this question for other people because I obviously know I have an idea of how just normal civilians can help, but like, what do you wish you saw more of from just everyday people? Maybe people that did or didn't serve, but like, what do you think is the next like breakthrough? What will the next breakthrough require? Will it?
So it's a joint effort. The first part is we have to, as veterans,
got to decide you'll take the help.
Talk about, we got to be willing to ask for help and to be willing to talk about our experiences, right? Yep. And then the other part of that is civilians have to, I think some of them may be afraid or intimidated to ask, and I don't want them to be, right? Which is why, one of the reasons I think I'm so outspoken and try to talk about my experiences, but they have to be receptive, they have to be willing to listen to a vet. And for me, it's mostly about these civilians who have family members, because that's the support system, right? That's where it starts. You want it to be the community, but it starts at home. It starts with the family. So you want the family to say, hey, Ryan, are you doing okay? I saw that PTSD, there's 22 vets a day that commit suicide. Is that real? And start the conversation.
Right.
The more people know, the more informed decisions and, they can make and think about, how our military veteran service affects them and then their community. So I didn't realize that like my behavior, my interactions with other people would affect my community. And here's some of the ways, and I don't want to be like the poster boy for the negativity of PTSD, but I'll tell you, like some of my experiences, it drove my behavior, which is why I went and got my degree in social work. Like I learned about this stuff because I needed to know what I was up against, like my demons, right? So I'll give you an example. I'd been bombed a lot. I'd been home for like, I don't know, I think at the time, like 18 months, 2 years or something. I was in a gas station, and it's weird how random the triggers or the sight, sound, smell stuff affects you and goes to your memory. So I was in the gas station. A guy gets a drink out of the, cooler, refrigerator doors, and he just kind of shuts it a little hard, and it sounded like a mortar. And immediately I kind of like froze for a second thinking I'm about to get bombed. And then I realized like it was this guy, and he slammed the thing, and he didn't really slam it, but he just shut it a little bit hard. Just gave it a little push, and I'm like, what the fuck did you do that for? Was that necessary? And the guy has no idea. Like
what you're even talking about. That's like why you're even upset.
He has no idea. I wasn't even in his world. I wasn't on his radar.
Right.
And now he's got this 200+ pound tattooed, pissed off dude, like, foaming at the mouth.
Pissed off because of something completely different.
Yeah, and I didn't control it. I couldn't control him or what he was doing, and he had no idea that this would affect me. So I was like, I got to do something about it. Like, you can't keep walking around acting like this or behaving that way. Someone's eventually either going to punch you in the mouth or, it's going to cause more problems in my life.
Someone's going to call the fucking cops on you.
Which is, it is what happened. I did go to jail. I did have interactions like that with people where, people were like, this dude's off his rocker. And they were 100% right. And that scared me because, I'm a dad now, and I want my kids to see me doing the right thing.
Right.
And they know that I'm going to screw up. I have explained to them that I'm human. I'm going to make many mistakes. I fall down a lot. But for me, accountability is so important that I want them to know I have no problem. If I'm wrong, if I, yell at them or I ground them or give them punishment for something that, wasn't their fault, maybe it was their sibling or whatever. If I make a mistake, if I'm upset and you don't feel you can talk to me then, come back and talk to me later. And I want to be receptive to that. I want to be able to, to remain teachable and coachable, just like I want them to be. I want them to be teachable and coachable. And I tell them that, like, listen, my job is to help teach you to, get ready to be a good person and an adult and take care of yourself, right? But I also want to make sure that you help other people and do things and are selfless. I need you to know that we all make mistakes and screw up. And if I show you that it's okay, then you'll know it's okay when you screw up. That way you can come talk to me and say, hey, I screwed up, and you won't be afraid to do that.
Right.
Communication is such a huge thing. So in the military, right, as a squad leader, my guys had to do what I said. And, when I said it, and if they didn't, I could give them an Article 15. I could make them do push-ups back when they used to do that. Yep. There were a lot of things that I could use for, to help them get the point. With my kids, I want to be more gentle. And one of the things that really fucked me up, man, was my wife said, we're not your soldiers one day. And I was yelling at them, I'm not your soldier. They're not your soldiers. And I was like,
fuck, yeah. That's eye-opening, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't mean to do that. Like, really? And so that's when that's actually when I started going back to school and I started like learning more about this stuff, because I knew that I was not responding appropriately and I wasn't communicating effectively. So I want to teach these guys the shit that the military didn't. Like, they taught us a lot of stuff that was effective in combat. It's not effective back here. It's not good for relationships. Why your grandfather struggles, why my dad has struggled. He's been married so many times. And, I got sisters from random women and all the, paternity test when I was like 15, like, oh, I got another sister.
All right.
So bad relationships, bad communication, bad coping skills. We have to stop that. And not just for veterans or first responders, right? Because first responders get to drive home to figure this shit out, to try to go be an engaged parent, husband,
That to me, every time I've been thanked for my service by a law enforcement officer or a paramedic or something, I'm like, dude, I can't imagine doing what you do, because like we sign up and we, God forbid, never have to fight another war on United States soil, but like we go somewhere
that's
for
the
months
point, right?
at a time.
To be the away team.
You detach, and and that's it. You can kind of separate those things. I can't imagine having to smoke a dude at noon and then go home to my family at 6 o'clock for dinner, and it's like,
or scrape some 7-year-old out of the car or off the pavement and then go home and eat
to your 7-year-old.
Yeah, that looks similar. That like those things are so gut wrenching to me that's one of the reasons we do this. I know we were talking about so we do the squad recon. Mm-hmm. Just want to circle back to that. We have a Meet the Need program, which started because we were helping United States Marine Corps Sergeant Tyler Andrews, who got blown up in Kabul, the bombing at the airport when we were leaving Afghanistan. So the Meet the Need program is essentially where folks are struggling and they have an immediate need. They're in crisis, whether it's, late payments on stuff. The world has been a little crazy for the last, nearly 2 years. So we understand that. We want to make sure that people don't end up homeless, or they don't, they don't feel suicidal because they feel helpless or hopeless about their situation. So we, ask the community for help, and we help provide those resources, whether it be, for Thanksgiving, provided Thanksgiving meals for people. We're going to do the same thing for Christmas. We've, obviously we've partnered with you guys. We've got, several families that we're going to help out during the holidays to make sure that, they still feel some sort of normalcy. We have people who are out of work or, aren't making as much, or just whatever random things that, life has thrown their way, and they're trying to figure it out. We want to make sure that they can focus on, kind of getting out of their situation, and we'll take care of the immediate needs while they're doing that, so that they can, get back on their feet,
So these families that we're partnering up and helping out these holidays, is that through the Meet the Need program?
Yeah, that's going to be through
because I did notice like when I was like, we got some other nominations, and they were like an Oculus, and we're like, hold on a minute, dude. You put an Oculus Rift on, and then we see your guys' list that you sent us, and they're like, hey, these are our clothing sizes. We need the basics.
Yeah.
I think that there was one toy on that list, and that's because the parent was like, hey, I was able to take care of the bare necessities, which is the smart thing to do, right? Buy those first.
Yeah.
And was like, I'd like to just make this a little bit more special. So just for our viewers, we've partnered up with Warfighter Overwatch, and we're going to be sponsoring 5+ families. That's what we've committed to now. We definitely got a late start on the I don't know, like holiday drive, I suppose you'd call it. Good Idea Ferry visited us in like the first week of December, and we didn't want to wait till next year. So I hit Danny up. I met him a few months ago at the nonprofit showcase by the Folsom Chamber. Talked to him. I was a fister. He was a fister. Both love tattoos, and just immediately kind of hit it off. And we're going to be partnering up for this holiday season. And I hope the first of many, dude. I'd love to take on 10, 15, 20 next year, when we have a little more time. But this Meet the Need things, it does not sound like it's only a holiday.
No. So
thing.
I'll give you an example, right? So we started because the Andrews family needed our help, immediate help. Their life got flipped upside down. There's a plethora of guys that we know that have been. So I'll give you, like I talked about Shane. So Shane has to harvest parts from his wheelchairs, so that way, because the VA will only give him, a wheelchair every so often, or parts every so often. He has to fix or repair things himself, right? He's missing both his legs. His brain is so damaged. So he was dead for several minutes, more than once. He had died. His heart stopped, lack of oxygen. He can't read. He's tried. They gave him speech therapist, occupational therapist. He's had tutors, people to help him. He can't. His brain is so damaged that he can't. So the expectations that they put on him are a little ridiculous. But he has to take parts to have a wheelchair. And I'm thinking, I don't think they understand. We sent this kid to war, and I told you his story. He took another guy's spot who was not feeling good.
Right.
He was not only had he volunteered to serve the military, he volunteered to serve as an infantryman. He went to war.
Man, he did some job that literally wasn't even his to do that.
That's
day.
right. And it cost him. And now here we are giving him shit about getting wheelchair parts. So Shane tells me he needs something. We make sure we take care of it. And it's not just him. Because of Shane, I've met a lot of guys that are in similar situations who are, are single, double, triple amputees. Even we have quads now. People who are surviving things they never would have survived, in Vietnam or before. And so we have these guys with these ridiculous injuries, but a will to live, something inside of them that's burning that, they just need resources and little help. Well, if, Shane does sled hockey as well. Puertas, one of our other double amputees, he's a Paralympic athlete. He ran in Tokyo. He got 4th place. He didn't medal. He was so upset. He went back to the gym and worked out like at the Olympic thing right before, or after he lost. He said, I got less than 3. I'm going to be ready for the next one.
Hell yeah.
And I love that. So if they need something, we want to make sure we provide it. And you don't have to be a double amputee to have a crisis or need some help. If you're struggling with bills, or if you're, we can't fulfill everyone's need,
right.
But we'll vet the
damn well try.
That's right. We're going to do our best to make sure that we give the resources to these folks and, take that stress off.
Oh, dude, I want to help as much as I can. So, I mean, this I feel like should be something that we do regularly.
Too easy.
I'd love to help. I know a lot of people that would love to help out. A lot of them just don't really know how, and so I think that, your guys' sites, your socials, and how you're showing kind of the behind the scenes stuff of what your guys doing for these folks is so important, man.
We want to be that bridge. We want, so when I finally asked for help, I genuinely found people who wanted to help me. And that's one of the things I want, the guys and girls to know out there. If you're struggling, you reach out. There's people who do want to help and who have resources who can help you. So, don't be afraid. The fear and stigma that you have of, feeling weak or whatever, it's what helps us connect as humans. We're all human.
Dude, everybody, every last person on this planet has needed help from a friend at one point or another, dude. And I don't know if you watch Letterkenny, but one of my favorite things in that show is if a friend asks for help, you help them. Period. That's just what they live by.
Isn't that the way the world should be?
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be. But it's not, and that's why I'm really happy there's people like you out here, man.
Man, I'm glad you had me on.
Yeah. Thanks, dude.
Appreciate it.
firm. Keep a hard posture. Only prosecute targets that are immediate threat. Over. Roger that, Red 5. Hold in position. Stand by for further reports. Charlie 902 out.